with an open mind, humbly asking the plants for assistance. And eventually, a certain plant will capture their attention, calling out to greet them and declaring itself the proper remedy. Seems pretty bizarre from our Western point of view, our Western scientific way of knowing. But these indigenous practitioners are highly successful healers with specific sensitivities. Many of us may consider these indigenous people uneducated. Remember that, going back to dualism, educated versus uneducated. Some of us struggled with that one. But what kind of education is the best? It depends where people live and what they need to do and their own sensitivities. So now when you look at that chart, superior to inferior, what comes up? Here are some word pairs. Sometimes we default to what makes sense to us as being humans are superior. But if we dig in with our head and our heart and our gut, we can see things differently, really. We can shift that story, going back to in Lakesh, I am another you. So take a moment and talk to your neighbor about this.
So I'm saying in a way, I feel like, so the one I was talking about most was human and tree. So it's like trees obviously provide us an option to live, but it's also humans cut down trees and trees don't have like a defense mechanism against that. So it's like, which is really like superior and inferior. But obviously you could argue anything for it, but I think mostly like for most of them, like it's like we're equal. So.
Thank you. Any other thoughts out there? So what we've been working our way through here is speciesism. The idea that being human is a good enough reason to have greater moral rights than non-human animals and plants. Speciesism. What we're trying to do is think about moving from ego, of where we are above or in charge of, or whatever the word is there, superior to, versus the fact that really eco looks more like that, where we're all in the circle together. Moving from ego to ego, or moving from ego to eco, excuse me. Eco meaning the habitat or the environment. All species are part of this great whole. Everything is interconnected, interrelated. All of the pieces have important parts to play in the ecosystem, all with our unique sensitivities. So an ism it's a distinct belief system, a distinct practice or a philosophy, And typically it can be a political ideology or sometimes an artistic movement. So if you think about sexism, racism, there's this notion of superiority. Communism and socialism, thinking about political belief systems that determine who's entitled to what. It's a story of separation. This ism, story of separation, separates us from relationship. So back to speciesism, the idea that because non-human animals are not human, their interest in their lives matters less than our interest in our lives. So I really want to note here that people that are working for racial or sexual equality often find this comparison insulting, and that's not my intention. Their struggle for equality has a moral and social importance, that this is important, but those things are above that. Some argue that speciesism is natural. It's biologically natural to treat one's own species favorably, and virtually all non-human animals do this same thing, except that we have the power to choose. We've talked a lot about that, our power of choice. So how can we move through the world where we are aware of how we are viewing other living things around us? We have these biases and these belief systems that exist that leave out entire groups of beings, and I believe that it is vital, any of these things, that we look at our biases, reflect on how they show up in our lives, understand that the separation from relationships that causes, and then how can we make choices about life moving forward that will be more inclusive in all kinds of ways. It's just another level of this, changing choice to change dualism, moving from either or to both and, seeing the value. And directly related to your comment, actually, taking in this image. I don't know the story of this image. I just thought it was sort of a striking conversation piece. So, talk to your neighbor about this. What comes up for you here? Probably 2,000 years old, giving to the life of the forest around it. Do we have the right to do this? Assume that it's ours and that we can just own it and that we can just take it? What do you think? I'd love to hear from some folks.
Hi. I don't think it has to be we have a right to take the wood from the tree. I think it's kind of just that's how nature works. I don't think when we die and we start to decompose, I don't think any flies and worms and decomposers, they don't really care Like they don't see it as like, oh, we have the right to like take this person's body. The same thing, like if we need wood, we need wood.
Interesting. Any responses or thoughts, either to him or separate?
Jen, we have one at the top.
Thank you.
The biggest part that I'm struggling is with there's no denying that like humans are the dominant species on our planet, and it seems like if there's a natural way of things being equal, then why have we taken over so much? Like, how is that possible?
Yeah. Well, the word dominant, that's interesting. I mean, we just went through, COVID, where it appeared as though that's a virus, and it had a pretty dominant effect over us. So I like that you're questioning that and thinking about that, and so I would continue to like dive into that dominant. What does that really mean?
We have one over here.
Okay.
So someone else had said that like trees don't have like a defense mechanism, but like when I look at this picture, like that tree is so big and it's clearly taking so much effort and like a giant like chainsaw to like work on it, and like to me like that's its defense, and like it has such strong roots and it's been there for so long that like that's its defense. And also to like the previous person, like I think you said it when you said like dominant, like I think man's place so far in the world has been violence and to conquer, and I feel like viewing nature as something to conquer, to like the fact that we have like a space force to like conquer space, like the fact that our drive is not just explore and be one with, but to conquer is like very innately human and like capitalistic, and I think that's like a big barrier into being one with nature, is that we have a drive to conquer.
Intriguing. Thank you.
Jen, we have another up on your left.
Cool.
So I wouldn't say conquering is like exclusively a human thing, because like chimpanzees will literally go and just take over a neighboring tribe and like, eviscerate the local populace. Like they'll do, like it's not necessarily just humans that do this. But I'll also say like when it comes to humans, our capacity to understand what we're doing and to have like an ends to a means, the ends to a means, that is innately human. So I wouldn't say like conquering is just a human activity.
True. I wonder about primates. I'm just trying to think about, yes, other primates do it. I'm trying to think of other examples of species that do it. So that's a good thing for me to think about. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Dolphins? Dolphins? I'll have to research dolphins. I don't know. Ants. Ants are interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you. I'll look those up more. Yes.
Hi. So when I look at the picture, I mean, I see the big chainsaw, I see them cutting into the tree, but I feel like if you were to like zoom out, you could see necessarily like maybe the tree's overgrown and disrupting other parts of the environment. Maybe it's going to be used for something to help grow a garden or something, make outlines for something, make a house for somebody. So I think just looking at, oh, you're cutting down a tree, the chainsaw, is kind of closed-minded, and you just need to look at what it's going to get used for. Look at the big picture before you make your opinions.
Yeah, that's why I said I don't know the story of this picture. I admitted that at the beginning because I don't know. But I think that the picture can bring up all kinds of different feelings. So thank you for bringing that up. And that's why I said I don't know. Yeah. Back in the back. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hi, so my partner and I kind of looked at it like a different way. So we looked at it like, sure, like a man is cutting down a tree and like kind of killing a tree, but that tree, like depending on which way it falls, and if you were near that tree, could easily like kill a man also. So maybe like they're cutting it down because it is like a danger, just in case.
Yeah. I think this is a good point to bring up, that when we collect information or when we see an image on social media or on the news or anywhere, a friend tells us a story and then we take in that story, it's about finding all the information, right? And before we jump to conclusions, before we jump to an action, before we make judgments, to get the whole story, to do the research. And so I use this image because I think it evokes this kind of debate, and I think that's cool, to really think about it from all sides. One of the things that it brings up for me is that that tree is, no matter what's happening, why it's happening, that tree is way older than that guy, and so how is it that connection, or what is that connection? And so, how does that guy feel about it? There's so much to the story to know. But I do want to take us back to this image. So when you feel these things, right, coming up, whether you're frustrated about the picture I chose, or whether it's frustrated about something that somebody else said, or trying to see it from their perspective is really key. So how would changing our way of seeing and opening our sensitivities make a difference? Whether it's in this kind of debate or whether it's about, tree hugging. So if not, why wouldn't it work that way? And if it is worth changing, then how would it change? What would make a difference? So take another moment and talk to your partner again.